Hello, here are the examples or the problems from the practice final test that we didn't have time to do in class. So starting with number 8, plot the x and y intercepts and use them to graph that function. So this is in standard form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my little chart of x and y, and the intercepts are when x is 0 and when y is 0. So when x is 0, if we plug in 0 for x here, this whole thing disappears and we have y equals 7. The other one, when y equals 0, so in this case, this would be a 0, so this whole thing disappears. We have 7x equals 7, so x has to be 1. And with those two intercepts, that is really 2 points, we can graph a line. So the point 0, 7 is here, the point 1, 0 is here, so that's going to be our line, something like that. This is my favorite way to do it, and that was it asking you to plot the x and y intercepts. Some of you might choose to solve for y first and do negative 7x plus 7, and you'll get the same result because you're going to end up getting 7, the y-intercept is here, and then the slope negative 7 over 1 is going to be negative 7 over 1. Negative 7 over 1. Anyway, two different ways of doing it. Number 9. This is to give us a function, h of x equals negative x minus 4. And then they ask us to solve for x when h of x equals 9. The important thing here to know is that this is the input and this is the output. So 9 is the output. So what we can do here is we want to know when is this function equal to 9. And we just have to solve this equation. I'm going to first add 4 on both sides. And then I'm going to divide or multiply, in this case it doesn't matter, by negative 1. So x equals negative 13, and that'd be the answer. Number 10, solve the equations for all values of x by completing the square. This is one where actually, even though it says by completing the square, for the final test, if you want to do it using the quadratic formula, that's fine too. These are problems that are going to have irrational answers, that is answers with a square root, so you can actually not solve it by factoring. But I'm going to do it by completing the square. So x squared minus 16x equals negative 47. And then when I divide the 16, I want to complete the square. I need to know what's the magic number that I have to add here. So negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. A squared is 64, so I'm going to add 64 on both sides. And why do I do that? So I can actually write here, this is a perfect square trinomial. This is x minus 8 squared equals 64 minus 47. I think that's 17. And now that we've completed the square, we can solve by taking the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. I would try to simplify the square root. Right now I cannot. 17 is a prime number. And then I'm going to add 8 on both sides. And that would be the answer. 8 plus or minus square root of 17. If you want to write it as two separate answers, like that, that's fine too. I'm used to doing it all in one, but either of the two ways is fine. Number 11, find the solution of a system of equations. These are two equations that happen at the same time, and I have to find the value of x and y that satisfy both equations simultaneously. This is set up, this is where we learned how to do it graphically, by elimination and by substitution. The way it's set up with in standard form, all the x's here and then all the y's here, this seems to be set up for elimination, and that's what I'm going to do. That's where we add both equations, but before that, we need to make sure that we have the same coefficient with different number. So for example, here I could multiply all of this by 6 to get a negative 12 here, or by 4 to get a negative 8. I'm going to do by 4 because it's a smaller number, so I'm going to multiply this by 4. So I copy the first line. And the second equation becomes negative 8x minus 8y equals negative 16. Now I'm going to add like terms. 12 minus 8 is 4x. 8y minus 8y is 0. That's what we wanted. That's why it's called elimination. We eliminate one variable. And then negative 28. And when I divide both sides by 4, I get x equals negative 7. I'm not done yet. I need to bring one of the two equations to find the value of y. For example, I'm going to get this one because it seems to have smaller coefficients. And I'm going to plug in the value of x that I just found. So negative 2 times x minus 2y has to be equal to negative 4. And now I can solve for y. This is 14, so I'm going to subtract 14, I'm going to subtract 14 on both sides. I'm going to subtract 14 on the other side, I get negative 18. And then when I divide by negative 2, I get 9. So my answer is that point, x equals negative 7, y equals 9. Now let me test it. When I plug in negative 7 times 12, I get negative 84. And then 8 times 9 is plus 72 equals negative 12. So that's correct. And then for the second one, I get negative 2 times negative 7 is 14 minus 18 equals negative 4. That works too. Always remember to check your answers. Number 12, solve for B. Okay, the first thing, so when I want to solve for B, I want to get rid of this and I want to get rid of that, but we also like B to be in the numerator. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the g over 3. So I'm going to subtract, g to the third on both sides. When I do that, I get 2d over d on one side, and on the right hand side I had 7 minus g to the third. And now we saw different ways of dealing with this. I think the easiest way to do is to do the reciprocal of both sides. So I'm going to flip top and bottom of both sides, and in that way, my variable, the variable that I'm interested in, no longer will be in the denominator. So b over 2d equals 7 minus g over 3. And now I can multiply, I could write here reciprocal. And now I can multiply both sides by 2d, so that b would be by itself. In this case, b equals 2d multiplies 7 minus g cubed. And that's going to be our answer. So we're trying to solve for b, but instead of having numbers, we have letters. We follow a very similar process. What is the equation of the line that passes through the 2 points? Okay, to write the equation of a line, we need a point and a slope. In this case, we have 2 points, so we're going to have to find a slope also. There's a couple of ways of doing this, the line, but you're always going to have to find the slope. So let's find the slope. The slope, if you remember, is going to be the difference in the y values over the difference in the x values. So y2, so that's that value, minus that value, over x2, so that 4, minus that value, and this is where you have to be careful, minus a negative is going to be a positive. So in this case, I get negative 3 over 12, or simplifies to negative 1 over 4, 1/4. Now there's a couple of ways of doing the next step. The easiest thing for me, the one step, maybe not easier, the one step way is to use the point slope formula, where I'm just going to do y minus one of the 2 points. For example, I can use this point, so y minus 2 equals slope. Maybe let me mark the slope like this in purple. So slope, and then it's going to be x minus the x value. In this case, it's -8, so that's going to be negative, and negative is going to be +8. And this could be an answer. You don't need to write in the slope-intercept or anything. Some of you might do it a different way. So you still have to find the slope first, but once you find the slope, some of you might write something like this: y equals mx plus b, except that we just found the slope, so we know that this is y equals 1/4 of x plus b. And now in order to find b, we can use this point, or any of the 2 points, but for example that one, to find b. So wherever it says y, we're going to write 2. Wherever it says x, we're going to write -x. So our equation goes like this. So we just plugged in an x and y value, so this means 2 equals negative, and negative is positive. 8/4 is 2 plus b, so in this case, b equals 0. So that would be that the line is y equals -1/4 of x. Now, to make sure, since we did it both ways, we could compare if these two are the same by manipulating this one a little bit. So this is going to be -1/4 of x. I distribute the -1/4, so this is going to be -2. And when I add 2 on both sides, I get the same thing. So yes, they are the same equation. Number 14, this is a systems of equation word problem. So first, I'm going to read the problem. Then I'm going to look for the variables. So in this case, number of commercials. So for example, X, or actually I can call it C, number of commercials in which the song played. And then M for number of movies. Once I have my 2 variables, now I can write the equations. I'm probably going to need 2 equations. So in this case, you can go to totals. So that's a total. It sounds like $600. How does Francisco make $600? Well, he makes $600 from 2 things, from commercials and movies. He makes $30 for every commercial, and then $90 for every movie. That's one equation, but since we have 2 variables, we're going to need a second equation. And the second equation is going to come from this statement. The Francisco songs were played on twice as many commercials as movies. So I like starting for the one, I like asking myself, which one is bigger, commercials or movies? And commercials is bigger. So then commercial is going to be twice the movies, 2 times the movies. And now that we have a system of equations, now we can solve the system. But this is the first step. So this is the system of equations. And now to solve, it looks like we could just do substitution here. You can also do elimination if you prefer. Let me see if I can do it here. So when I substitute, wherever it says C, I'm going to write 2m. And then the rest of the equation remains. In this case, this is 60m plus 90m equals 600, or 150m equals 600, or m equals 600 over 150, 0, 0, 60 over 15 is 4. So that would be 4 movies, and then since we said that C equals 2m, that's going to be 2 times 4, so 8. So it'd be 8 movies. The answer, sorry, 4 movies and 8 commercials. And lastly, this one, it says solve using the quadratic formula. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 20x, so we can move everything to the left-hand side of the equation, and we have an equals to 0. And we're going to write in order. First the x squares, then the x's, and then the constant term. Now we're going to identify what our coefficients are. A equals 4, whatever multiplies the x squared. B equals 20, whatever multiplies the x's. And C equals 29. Now we can write a quadratic formula. I like writing it every single time because that's how I help stick in the memory. So negative b is going to be negative 20 plus or minus 20 squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I might need a calculator for this, so give me a second. First, I'm going to do the inside of the square root. And the inside of the square root seems to be negative 64. Then I'm going to simplify the square root. So in this case, all of this remains the same, but I'm going to simplify that. So I know that the square root of 64 is 8, and I know that the square root of a negative number is just going to add an I. So that's how you simplify that. And then lastly, we're going to see if we can simplify the fraction. In this case, all those numbers are divisible by 2. So I'm going to, sorry, when I said 2a, whoops, my bad. I completely forgot to put a, every time I said 2a here, that could have been a 4. So that's 2a, that's 2 times 4, and then that's an 8, that's an 8. Sorry, so now in order to simplify a fraction, I'm going to divide everything by 4. 4 is the number that goes into all of those. So negative 5 plus or minus 2i all over 2. And that would be the answer. Thanks for watching, and let me know